February the 7th, 2026. Guys, this is a very interesting video, and I hope you enjoy it. We're talking about the history and going back a long way of the greatest book ever known, and it's the largest seller by billions of any book on the planet. It's called the King James Bible. Now, no book has ever sold 1 billion copies, but the King James has billions out. So that just tells you there's not much comparison to it. It says, with multiple billions of copies in print, no other book can claim even 1 billion copies. Even more impressive, the King James Bible remains one of the most popular translations of the Bible today. In spite of being in an archaic dialect, and that's English with the these and thous, and in the original King James 1611, you couldn't even read it. It was so archaic in the English dialect then. But it's over 4 centuries old. 1611, that's when it was printed. First printed, and that was after the printing presses came out. There's simply no more beloved, influential, or widely read book in the world. And again, it's easily accessible. It's pushed by most churches. You've got the newer Bibles and things like that, but we've talked about that. We've talked about the pitfalls in not understanding the differences in the new Bible. If they don't go back to the original Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, then either the scribes intentionally changed words or they just really were not translated properly. I think it was the former because we had Kenite scribes. Now, again, it's associated with the year 1611 in which it was originally published. The original 1611 version of the King James, however, ceased publication in the early 1600s, with the exception of some modern era facsimiles of the 1611 KJV Bible. All of the billions of mass-produced King James Version Bibles printed in the last 200 years are in fact highly revised editions differing substantially from the 4 centuries old 1611 original version, as we will see. Now, why is that, guys? We're going to find out, and it's important for you to understand this because there's some conflict in understanding when people you start talking about original languages and things like that, and how some books are there, some aren't. Just follow with me on this. I think you'll enjoy it. It says the first English translations of the Bible were the handwritten manuscripts of John Wycliffe, and this was before the Gutenberg presses, but it was in 1300s. So we got from the 1300s to 1611, 200 something years there of what has changed in the original English translation of the Bible. This is very important, and you'll have to understand the manipulation. And it was well before Gutenberg's invention of the printing press in 1455. The lineage of Protestant-produced printed English Bibles began in the early 1500s. The first printed English New Testament was by William Tyndale in the 1520s and 1530s, first prints. The first complete English Bible was published by Miles Coverdale in 1535. The first English Bible translated directly from the original Hebrew and Greek was the Matthew Tyndale Bible of 1537 and 1549. Now that's going to be the closest English translation that you can get. But a lot was in the original King James Version too that is not there now. The Church of England, also known as the Anglican Church, originally took the same position as the Roman Catholic Church, which was to keep God's word trapped in the old ecclesiastical language of Latin and to kill any Protestant who dared to print the Bible in English. Think about that. However, that position changed with the advent of King Henry VIII's Great Bible of 1539 as the first officially authorized Bible of the Anglican Church. Not Protestant, okay? Not Roman Catholic, Anglican. This was followed by the 1568 Bishop's Bible under the reign of Queen Elizabeth as the second officially authorized English Bible of the Anglican Church. And finally, this was followed by the 1611 King James Bible under the reign of King James as the third officially authorized English Bible of the Anglican Church. All of the first three Now, even though the King James was the third in line in 1611, guys, they're still taking away from it. But it says it may come to a shock as those who assume the King James was either the first English Bible or at least among the first, to learn that the 1611 KJV Bible in fact came nearly a century after the several English Bible translations of the 1500s which preceded it. Indeed, the King James Bible was not even one of the first translations to be authorized by the church. We just went through that. Again, and that goes back to the authorized Anglican Church Bibles, 1539, 1568, and then King James in 1611. It says, many are also surprised to learn that the 1611 King James Bible was not a Protestant Bible, but rather it was an Anglican Church of England Bible. Though the KJV Bible is, of course, embraced by Protestants everywhere today. Curiously, the greatest Protestant Bible, the 1560 Geneva Bible, is not well known today and no longer printed except in small quantity by niche market publishers. Think about that. The greatest Protestant Bible has been replaced. Now, think about where I'm going here, and just listen, open your eyes, open your ears, and think about it. Now, many claim to be Protestants to this day, but King James didn't, and he didn't like them. And what he did, he says that King James was so aggravated by the competition, again from the Geneva Bible, that by 1616, which would be 5 years after the printing of the KJV, he had effectively made it illegal to print the Geneva Bible in England. Now that's pretty rough, isn't it? Bible control, book control. Anyway, it says, having actually threatened to enforce such a ban 1611, ensuring that his own King James Version would reign supreme without rival. But watch what happens to it. It says King James was highly educated and very intelligent man, but his personal life made him the most controversial person to ever rule over England since his relative King Henry VIII. King James publicly proclaimed in 1622 that English kings are rightly called gods. Are you listening, guys? And as such, kings could kill whomever they wished, marry whomever they wished, and engage in sexual relations with anyone they wished, male or female. He even declared it a crime to question the king's personal morality. And guys, this is as much a history lesson as it is of anything else, but it's more than one message. But it is history. It was in fact King James who motivated the founding of what became the U.S. of America. A group of Protestant separatists in the early 1600s rejected the practice of the King's Anglican Church and the morality of King James. He was gay as hell, okay? Bi, I guess is what you would call it. And he would kill anybody that didn't go along with him. And people don't realize that he was also involved in beginning the witch trials and the burnings and the hangings because he believed certain people were witches. Now, what would Christ have done? And what did he tell the disciples to do? You cast the demons out of the person. You don't burn them and torture them and kill them. So who are we dealing with here? It's almost a deal with burning sacrifices. Anyway, he found that's the reason the Protestant separatists came here in the 1600s, because of the Anglican Church and the morality of King James. They tried to establish their own Protestant churches, but King James refused to allow them religious freedom, fining and imprisoning them. Eventually, these Protestant separatists fled England on a ship called the Mayflower, becoming known as Pilgrims. In 1620, they landed on the shore of Plymouth, Massachusetts, and began to establish a community with a separation of church and state in order to avoid the tyranny from which they had fled, again under King James. They brought with them their beloved English Protestant Geneva Bible, as they were obviously not fans of King James or his Bible. Curiously, as the years went by, the early American colonists drifted away from the Geneva Bible. It's the far-reaching hands of controlling the complete spiritual narrative. They got away from it temporarily, but it followed them. Now, some people think that the present-day King James Bible is a 1611 King James Bible. It's not. And the King James Bible, again, the translation that we have was originally translated over 200 years before that, right? So some of the problems that were in it were already there, and then the narrative was changed just so it would remain not Protestant because they were being persecuted. But it says, the shocking truth that is not even close to being an accurate claim, in spite of your King James Bible having the dedication to King James preface and to the Christian Reader preface and the title page that grandiosely proclaims it to be translated out of the original tongues and with the former translations diligently compared and revived by His Majesty's special command and appointed to be read in churches. Special command, kill everybody that don't agree with you. But at least we had the Mayflower come here, right? And what they're doing, guys, with the prefaces that were originally there, but with the changes, it's just become a marketing tool when they state that in the beginning, because it's nowhere near the original languages or translations, actually. And you would have to go back. Really, the best way is to go and get yourself a couple of different books. I've got a library behind me of books that I've had for 40, 45 years, still get some of different English translations of the Old and New Testament, and the transliterations, and looking into the Hebrew and the Greek and some of the words there. It's all important, but there's ways to test no matter what Bible you have. If you know how to look up some information in Hebrew and Greek, then you can do a little test on your own Bible, regardless of what it is. Now also, and I've read in many videos the Book of the Apocrypha and the Lost Books of Adam and Eve and all that, and many people say, you don't read those, that's not in the Bible, that was taken out. But who was it taken out by? But it wasn't King James. Listen, it says, first and foremost, almost 100% of the King James Bibles and all English Bibles printed throughout the 1600s, the 1700s, and most of the 1800s up until around 1855 contained 80 books, not 66. What Bible? The King James Bible. 80 books. That's why I have all of these behind me. The 14 books that were removed from the English Bible, including the King James Bibles, around 1885 are called the Apocrypha, or the Deuterocanonical, or Intertestament books. These books were written mostly around 400 BC to 200 BC, so they are Old Testament era Jewish material. King James wanted those in there, even though some of the translations were wrong. He even made it illegal to take them out by any printer, by any publisher. 1 year in jail and 1 year of all your wages if you took these books out of the King James Bible. The Apocrypha books are absolutely not Roman Catholic, as is often believed in error, because the Roman Catholics did not remove most of the ancient Jewish books from their Bibles. In fact, again, King James set forth in a decree that year when it was published, 1611, that if anyone printed his Bible without the Apocrypha books, he would fine them again a year, and a year of their wages with imprisonment. The Apocrypha was, by law and royal decree, part of every King James Version Bible printed from 1611 until close to 3 centuries after that. For 300 years, they had the Apocrypha books in there, and there's still people, when you read these on the internet and try to explain them, oh, BP, that you can't read that. They kicked them out for a reason. When for 300 years, the writer of the King James Bible said it was illegal to remove them. You got to wake up, guys. And what's interesting is this Apocrypha includes important history about what happened during the intertestamental period, which is right after the Old Testament and before the coming of Christ in the New Testament, We also find uniquely specific prophecy. As an example, in the apocryphal book of 2nd Esdras, which I have, most of you have, and a lot of it, guys, if you don't have the book, you can look it up online and a lot of it is free for you to read. Again, 2nd Esdras, chapter 7, verses 28 and 29, we find in the original 1611 King James, "For my son Jesus shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. After these years shall my son Christ die, and all men that have life. Bear in mind that these names, Jesus and Christ, appear nowhere in any Old Testament book, though the Messiah is spoken of, with many prophecies concerning his coming, but not providing a time estimate." Why did they take out 2nd Esdras? Again, let me read that. "For my son Jesus shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. After these years shall my son Christ die, and all men that have life. Bear in mind the names Jesus and Christ appear nowhere in any other Old Testament book." Now, you've got to think about, there were things that happened between then and now. You had the fall of different empires, the temple being torn down, all kind of events that came, Rome, Nero, all of that happening, guys. But it says most of the great Protestant reformers and preachers from the 1500s through the 1800s, including the great and beloved Baptist preacher of the late 1800s, Charles Spurgeon — are you listening, Baptist? I was raised a Baptist — preached from the Apocrypha. So it lasted, again, from 1611 up into the 1800s, those other books. All those years, people read them, they loved them, they cherished them, but not the controllers. The devil had to hide his work and make you think he doesn't exist. And that's when I've read the story of Sarah and Abraham with the devil involved many times on YouTube. All that's the devil had to hide himself in what now is the most popular book on the planet. Nothing's even close. But the unwarranted and illegal removal of the 14 apocryphal books in 1885 was only the most recent change to the 1611 King James Bible. There were also, again, like I said, before that, there were changes, right? There was also a multitude of changes to the Old Testament and New Testament scriptures. Why? What did I just say? Satan had its scribes, guys, the Kenites, and the so-called preachers of the times. He had them change them to hide himself. It says between the first revision of around 1615 and the last revision of 1769, notwithstanding the aforementioned 1885 removal of the 14 books, more than 400 wording changes and close to 40,000 changes in spelling, italics, and punctuation were made to the Old and New Testament scripture of the King James. And guys, some of the examples, the King James Bible from 1611 to the 1770s, there was a verse in there that said, "one lamb without blemish." King James Bibles of the 1700s up to today say "one ram without blemish." Do you know the difference? Guys, in Ezekiel 24:7, one of my favorite chapters, up until 1770s, it was talking about it poured it upon the ground. But after the 1700s, and what kind of meaning does this change in Ezekiel 24:7? Poured it not upon the ground. Look it up, guys. It's a great Bible lesson to understand why you have to pay attention. Again, before the 1770s, Ezekiel 24:7, it was poured upon the ground. Since then, it was poured not upon the ground. Exactly the opposite, kind of like the Roman rhino. So what we're seeing with the changing of the words, the removal of the books, is a complete change in the King James Bible in just 250 years. But everybody's been indoctrinated into that, And there's so many people, and I don't know if they're bots or what, or just they panic because that safety rug's been pulled out from under them. But so many people will disagree with any of this information, guys. And it's to their own demise. And guys, when they started printing back in 1611, and under the King James decree of death and imprisonment of changing it or printing the Geneva Bible, it says in the end it was realized that all the printers had in fact far more copies of the 1611 King James than were needed to fill the king's decree that one would be placed on every church pulpit and every college or seminary lectern in England with several extras to present as royal gifts. There were actually thousands of extra copies printed, way more than were needed in 1611. So they took the number of textbooks, unbound, complete Bibles, they had everything ready, but which was, again, they couldn't sell them or couldn't get rid of them. And so they threw them out the door of the royal warehouse that same year in 1611, an overprint. But then as that exploded and other Bibles were outlawed and words were changed and pulled out to make it sound nice and sweet to the taste, then it changed. Now, let's look at one of the more popular translations, and I've had them for years. These are 4 hardbound copies, and I have the 3 that are the Old Testament. They got the entire New Testament in one copy, but I couldn't find the hardbound, so I have it in a very popular, large paperback. And so I've always checked it, used it for different translations. You got some good information in there, but there's a test to see if the devil had his hand even back in J.P. Green's literal translations. And these came out in 1993, and I think that's when I got them. Now, if you want to test any Bible you have, be honest with yourself and do the test. First thing to do is go to the beginning, Genesis 3, chapter 3:13, right here. And the way you tell that Satan is trying to hide himself from the beginning so he won't be recognized at the end is this test. And if this test doesn't do it, you've got the wrong Bibles or the wrong translations. And you can get the original transliterations that have the correct information, and even in them they'll have slight changes. But if they get this first part right about Satan, then you can pretty much trust them. None of them are King James. They're like English versions. And I'll put a link to a couple of them. You've seen me read those in different videos. But let's go to 3:13. Now, this is in the Green's Interlinear, one of the top, translating in this case from Hebrew to English without the these and thous. And then in this softbound copy I've got, it's Greek and Aramaic, translated to English of the New Testament without the these and thous. It's plain language like this, but even that can be deceptive. And again, this is one of the most respected translations of all, but it's not up to par. In 3:13 it says, and Yahweh God said to the woman, what is this you have done? And he's come in the garden. They've already committed the act with Satan. And most of you understand that it was a sexual act. I hope you do. And that she had a son by Satan and by Adam, Cain and Abel. And that's the division of the Kenites from then until now. And the Kenites are still in power. You can see because of the destruction and the chaos. But anyway, in 3:13, Yahweh God said to the woman, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. 3:13 is the key. If you don't have that in your Bible, what I'm about to show you, then start looking around. I'm not saying throw anything away because each book has its own information, but this word changed in 3:13 was changed by the serpent himself. Again, Yahweh God said to the woman, what is this you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. Completely incorrect. And what it does again is change the entire narrative, and the word deceive, guys, cannot be translated to the proper. Like if you take this and get the translations back to the original Hebrew, it won't work. because that's the wrong word that was put there, and Satan tried even back then and up to this day to hide what he did. Now I want to switch to eSword. Even it has imperfections. I found them, but in this one they had it completely right, and it's about 99% correct on its Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic translations. And it's free software. You can download it on our website at bprearthwatch.com. Scroll down on the right, you'll see a blue box that says eSword, the electronic edge of the Lord, I think. Anyway, let's look at this. Genesis 3:13, and the Lord, and this is using King James, going back into it's written in King James here, but the translation that we're going to look at from here via eSword, you'll see. It says, the Lord said unto the woman, what is thou that hast done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled me. Wasn't tricked, it wasn't deceived. It totally means something different in Hebrew. And that word means completely or wholly deceived. I'll show you. Now, most of you guys are familiar with eSword, and this is repetitive because I've used it on many videos over the last dozen years or so. But at the top, again, free download. You get right here, I've got it on KJV. It'll do different Bibles. But here it says KJV Plus. And what that's going to do, click right there, it's going to give you numbers. In this case, in the Old Testament, the numbers are preceded with an H for Hebrew. In the New Testament, you'll see a G there for Greek, even though some of that is Aramaic. But let's scroll down to 3:13. This is important. Right here, again, beguile was the correct word of translation, and the meaning is Hebrew word 5377. You can look at how it's spelled, how it's pronounced, and what it means, if I can get it to hold still. It says to lead astray, that is mentally to delude or morally to seduce, beguile, deceive, or utterly or completely seduced or beguiled. And so that was the seduction. And so you cannot see how Satan created the second group of earthlings with the seduction of Eve. Again, if you don't understand that a woman can have twins from two different fathers, you're sadly mistaken. Look it up. Anyway, that's what happened, because at the same time Adam took part, Satan took part, and there we had twins, and the evil twin killed Abel. And that's when, of course, we had Seth come along. And there's history that goes back a little deeper than Genesis about Adam and Eve. And that's in one of the books that King James, even himself, guys, said it was illegal to take out. And that has complete stories of who Satan is. So the attempts in our Bible that is the most popular, which it really should not be. It's the easier to read, and it's why. It's not the easiest to read, but why is it the most popular? It's because it's been pushed by the hands of darkness. The quicker you understand what I'm talking about, the quicker you're going to go into these actual translations of the Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic to see for yourself. Now, in the second part of this video, which I may get up this evening, if not first thing in the morning, but I may, I've started work on it, we're going to go a little deeper into who King James really was. Now, this book he wrote in 1597, and remember the King James came later, 1611, and it's demonology. And this is what he was, King James I, written by L. Breeze, and I guess it's a translation there. But it says, delve into the past of King James, again, Demonology, 1597, a captivating historical exposition, immerse yourself in the mind of King James. He was heavily into witchcraft, and that led, guys, into him burning what he thought was witches at the stake. And that led to why the pilgrims came here. But this is I have another full video information that I'll put it in full video about who he really was and what led up to him being in place to hand us the Bible he did. But even in that level, they knew not to take out the Apocryphas and the lost books. We're watching it, guys. Watch for the update. It's a heads up, be safe.